Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of leaders, welcome to Tatami Talk. My name is Juan. This is my partner, Anthony. And today we have a very special guest, my catch wrestling coach, my catch wrestling buddy, Raul Ramirez, PhD, LAC.
Thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, Raul, for our audiences, they probably don't know you. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Raul. That's pretty much it. So I'm the creator of the Catch Wrestling Alliance. So hopefully, maybe you've seen a little bit of our stuff on social media, or primarily YouTube. We have tons of videos there. I've organized several of the most important catch wrestling tournaments in the world, according to even the sports press, which is great to hear. So those are the Gotch, or we call it the Frank Gotch World Catch Wrestling Tournaments, or Gotch Worlds. We've had that for a few years, and hopefully maybe once COVID is over, we can continue with that.
Where's that being held, by the way? I've seen some clips of it.
Yeah, we had two in Iowa. So that was the home state of Frank Gotch. So basically the United States, one of the best catch wrestler in the world, like one of the greatest of all time. And that's where he lived.
Awesome.
Now, when it comes to catch wrestling, what tell us the background of how you got into catch wrestling, or how you chose this as your martial art.
Well, it all starts back in the 1700s. No, I'm just kidding.
Back when King.
So was it Hannibal crossing the mountain? No, I was kidding. I got into it because of Chinese kickboxing, so sanda. All right, so I had done that. I'd started that actually back in the late 1990s, and it has the kickboxing plus a lot of the wrestling, like takedowns in it. And so when I was a student at UCLA later, we had a lot of different martial arts going in the gym. And so I wanted to try to find something that kind of matched my understanding of grappling at that time. And did the jiu-jitsu class. Actually, I competed also in sumo wrestling, international sumo wrestling and stuff. And but eventually, just through research, I discovered catch wrestling, and that kind of matched more of my understanding of grappling at that time. So then I sought it out. So I did I did some seminars with Billy Robinson, but then those didn't seem it seemed a little too gimmicky in a way, where it's nothing else was happening. So, or it was the same thing every time. There's no real progression. So then I ended up asking him if I could just go to Arkansas, where he lived, to train with him privately. So I went there, and then also I got accepted to train at the home of catch wrestling, which is Wigan, England. And so I trained there with, again, one of the old timers who's still alive, Roy Wood in Wigan. And so he was the successor of this really famous coach, and who coached a lot of the famous British wrestlers who people might know about through a lot of marketing. And yeah, they're still popular in Japan as well. So Roy is the successor of that coach, Billy Riley. And so I trained with him as well several times, competed for him at some of his events in England as well. And so that's kind of how I got into it. But then because there is that American connection where catch wrestling came to the United States. So speaking of Frank Gotch, right? So it's there were some British wrestlers who came to the United States, and then one beat Farmer Burns, which is he's considered one of the grandfathers of catch wrestling in the United States. So that's kind of how it got transmitted to the United States, and Iowa in particular. And so that lineage still exists today. And so my buddy on the East Coast, John Strickland, is kind of that lineage holder for that lineage. And so he and I are good friends, and we've trained together several times, and you've had a chance to.
Yeah, actually, was it almost a year or 2 years ago. Now it feels maybe like a century now ago it feels, but yeah, I did a seminar with him through you at Catch Wrestling Alliance. Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. But
So
go ahead.
I know nothing about well, I wouldn't say nothing, but I know a very minuscule amount of research on catch wrestling. And you mentioned training under Roy Wood, who I've never heard of, but you mentioned you got accepted to train there. Was there a process? Like if we have some listeners in UK and they want to go check it out, can they just like show up, or is that like something you have to take a test or something?
I think you have to submit some kind of application, or I don't know if it's changed since I went, because I was like one of the first to. So basically, because like freestyle had gotten so big and there weren't really any catch wrestling events going on for decades in England, so then that gym switched to teaching freestyle. So then they wanted to like start teaching again. Because basically Roy Wood wanted to make sure that catch wrestling continued. And so he started to teach it again. And then they put out like maybe some notifications on social media, but you had to apply. And so then part of the first group that they started teaching. And so I think since then it has grown a little bit, where they have some people that live nearby where they can come and train regularly, like throughout the week. So I don't know if those classes you can just jump into, but I know they're quite selective about who they train.
Okay. So I know like how we talked about before, how I tell people, oh, well, I do catch wrestling. It's like, oh, I'm part of Catch Wrestling Alliance. How did you come up with the idea of Catch Wrestling Alliance? Because I know in America, there's not a whole lot of like catch wrestling federations or groups or whatnot.
Well, before we get to that, can you explain to me like how is catch wrestling like different from freestyle and Greco?
Because this is a question.
So I'm not too familiar with it. I'm sure some others aren't either, but I do know that Greco and freestyle came from catch wrestling, right? Like what they do in college nowadays in high schools.
Yeah, in particular, freestyle and folk style, or sometimes they call it scholastic wrestling, and what we do in the high schools and colleges. Those ones directly came from catch wrestling. But catch wrestling always had submission holds, so you can win by pinner submissions. There's no points, and you had to go until someone wins. So that was kind of the main difference. So there was no time limits, and when you had like two high-level guys. Sometimes we would say like the first fall would take even an hour or more before like someone got pinned or gave up. And sometimes there were multiple. If the wrestlers agreed to it, there could be multiple what we call like falls. So it could be best of three, but that wasn't always the case. But that's basically how it is. And then when the modern Olympics started again, they took the two most popular wrestling styles at that time. And so one was French wrestling, and I guess that was like the popular name of it, but then they renamed it to Greco-Roman so that it can have a homage to the ancients, even though that's not what they did. That was like the popular French version. And then the other thing, the other style was what they called amateur catches catch can. It's a really long name, but instantly like they barred the submission holds. Right. And then over time, adding the rules, point system, very, very short time limits. And they also ended up changing the name to freestyle.
I'm glad I asked that, because when I read like, oh, Greco came from catch, isn't like Greco-Roman, like wrestling was the original Olympic sport. So catch must be really old. So I'm glad you clarified the French style for me.
Well,
yeah, that's
go ahead. Because I have a weird story about that. Because when I was in high school and I did freestyle and folk, and we did a little bit Greco. The story that I learned from a big coach that I went to, this big seminar, was that the way Greco wrestling came about is that it was actually it was a game that the Roman soldiers used to play in France when they were there, when they were like Romans taking over everywhere. Mm-hmm. But it got popular in France and they kept you doing it. So yeah, Greco wrestling is French and came from France, but apparently it was like a game that the Roman soldiers used to play, a style of wrestling that they did for fun. So that's what I heard. That's why it became Greco wrestling, even though it's from France.
That's really interesting if that's true.
Yeah, well, that's a definite possibility because we have all these different regional wrestling styles like all over the world. But I mean, in particular, like even if you look at the British Isles, there is different regions and they had their own like grappling style and the rules were different. Sometimes you wore a jacket, sometimes not. Sometimes you had a different starting position. And that's kind of what was different about catch wrestling in particular. And that's the real reason why it has its name, catch as catch can, because there were styles where you had to start like hugging each other. Like you basically had one arm over the person's shoulder and the other one around their waist, and you locked your hands behind them. That was the starting position. A lot of them were kind of like even like the Chinese Shai Jiao, where it's like whoever you win if you just throw them down.
Mm-hmm.
But so catch wrestling was allowed continuous wrestling. So once you took them down, you can continue wrestling once you're on the ground and you try to go for a pin, but also you didn't have a set starting position. So say like Greco, you can't really grab the legs or whatever, but catch wrestling, you can grab the wrist, grab the head, grab the leg, whatever. So you catch them as you can, right? So that's a lot of people try to say, oh, catch them. It means catch as catch can means like any submission hold or whatever, but really you start neutral. So you start not touching them and then you have to go in and touch them, but you're free to grab a leg or whatever.
Okay.
You talked about like how you can win in a pin or submission. I know, like I grew up wrestling. Like as soon as your shoulders touch the mat flat, it's an automatic pin. I do judo right now. It's a 15-second pin for an ippon or win. It used to be 20 seconds, but now it's
20.
15 seconds.
It's still 20.
Is it still 20? Is that whatever?
Yeah.
These catch dudes. These new rules every year mess me up. No, because it's only 15 for Wazadi. That's why. 15 was for Wazadi.
They used to be, yeah. It's a long time ago.
20 for the ippon, whatever. But so in catch, how long does the pin have to be in a catch wrestling position?
2 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And is it a 2 seconds where it's just shoulders touching the mat, or is it like controlled pin where as long as I hold them down for 2 seconds?
Well, you can pin yourself, right? So if you're some people who are trying to maybe do some kind of rolling kind of submission thing, if you get stuck there, then and you can't. Like we had one event in Singapore where someone tried to do kind of a jiu-jitsu type sweep, and they got stuck, and so then they pinned themselves basically. So I think some other people, some other organizations, they try to have catch wrestling matches, and then I think they're so influenced by pro wrestling, so then they'll have someone like mark, or they'll count out loud like 1, 2, 3. But that is not the way it was done. That is done for show, right? So the professional wrestler knows how much time they have to kick out, right? So you try to make it dramatic, right? So that they wait for them just about to say the number 3.
yeah. Because I remember when the first time I trained with you, I was like, when I go to catch, like it's for fun and for play with me. It's like doing things. When I first started going, I didn't know the rules exactly. So I remember one time I had someone in my guard, and you're like, "Oh, Juan, you're pinned." I'm like, "What? What do you mean I'm pinned? He's in my guard." You're like, "No, you're 2 seconds of shoulder on the mat. You're done. Pin." I was like, "Ah, shit."
So there's no concept of guards in like full guard or half guard in catch wrestling, is there? In terms of the rule set?
Yes, there are, but they so a lot of times we would call that like body scissors, right? So when you have your legs, basically when you have someone in your guard and a closed guard, that would be called like body scissors, and you want to try to keep moving from there, not necessarily like staying on your back. You can try to shift the person over and basically get yourself off your shoulders before time's up. But also there is a like half guard position because you can use it a lot to, like you say, if you're on bottom and you set up what you guys call a kimura, or you call it double wrist lock, right? So if you set that up and you want to be hooked in so that they can't somersault out. But a lot of times that kind of position, like the half guard position, we often call that a leg Turk. But that's also kind of like I think calling something like that a Turk is, I think it's more of a recent innovation in wrestling.
Wow. Okay. So before I interrupted you, your question, Juan, you want to ask again?
Okay, so like we said, in America, like or around the world, I guess there's not that many like international or national federations of catch wrestling organizations at all. Like you hear about Snake Pit or Pancrase in Japan or SAW in Japan and stuff like that. I know So what made you create Catch Wrestling Alliance, you know?
Well, basically, there was one video, like a short movie that was made about one of my coaches, Roy Wood, and in it he states that a lot of what he sees people sharing, like as catch wrestling, he would never considered it to be catch wrestling. And the more I learned, directly from direct sources, it was different. It wasn't like these flashy pins and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that looks great, or a lot of techniques that look great from catch wrestling, but it wasn't a lot of these what we call show holds that I also see online a lot, that you wouldn't be able to get someone, or you wouldn't be able to submit someone with a lot of these things. And so that's why I started the organization, because I was friends also with John Strickland. So basically, like, we tried to get the most legit sources for catch wrestling united, and so that we can have a voice, right, amongst a lot of what's called, like, we say like the show hold crew, I guess, or I don't know, but there's a lot of that out there. And then because I hear a lot of criticisms about that, so usually someone, maybe if they find like our social media, then they'll ask, like, especially like someone who has like a real wrestling background. They're like, oh, I wrestled Division I in college, and like I saw your stuff, and it looks more like wrestling than these other things that I've seen. And so, like, what's up with, like, why is there that discrepancy? And that's, I think, it's probably like the whole pro wrestling influence, which I don't know if you guys want to talk about that, because that has really distorted the understanding.
That was gonna be a question. There's that the show, like the flashy stuff you're talking about, it doesn't really work in reality. That's probably made or influenced by pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, correct. So you've kind of seen that stuff where it's like maybe people are trying to pass off, this is a catch wrestling technique, and then it's like, when you get that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like every like I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I love it. I don't care. People talk shit. Go ahead, bring it. Come to the mat, play with me. But it's like every British pro wrestler always has like a history of catch can. Oh, he's a real hook guy, or he's a really catch guy. Oh, he trained at Snake Pit for a while. Like every British pro wrestler like is like this catch guy. And you see some of the things they do, and it's like, okay, that could be kind of real. That could be turned real. That's super fake right there. That's all for show.
Yeah. Oh no, so true. There's that one pro wrestler, Adrian Street.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he, I think he passed away. I don't want to say if he did or not, because he's still alive, right? But he did a series of interviews, and he addressed exactly what you're saying. He's like, because I believe he was from London, and he only made his way up to Wigan a few times. And he's like, a lot of the people who claim what you just said, either they went there a couple of times and got their asses kicked, and then never went back. Or like the ones who are like, say, like the most legit who stayed, that's what you want to try to judge a real like catch wrestler about, or like at least with his knowledge, right? The ones who stayed there and not just went and got beat up and then never returned. But yeah, that happens. A lot of times they'll still claim, oh, I trained there, even though it was like maybe once or twice.
Well, it's like for judo, when people go like, oh yeah, I went to Japan. I trained at Kodokan. I went to one open mat seminar. But it's like, I went to Kodokan. I went to the Kodokan. I'm not lying technically.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. Still to this day. I mean, you'll still. I think there's some dude who was claiming to be a catch wrestler who did a Sakuraba seminar once, like years ago, and I'm a catch wrestler. And I was like, wow, no.
Yeah, I learned when Sakuraba hold. I'm a catch guy now. I know a toe hold. I'm done.
yeah, exactly.
To extend on what the question that Juan asked, what is the goal of the Catch Wrestling Alliance? What did you set out to do when you created it?
Oh yeah, so in a way to promote the like authentic catch wrestling, because it is different, and it is not pro wrestling, right? And that was the thing. So it's like by World War II, the majority of professional wrestling had gone fake, right? Sorry, Juan.
oh yeah, you're killing me. For the business, I can't take it. Oh no, it is real. It's just predetermined. Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was the thing, and that's kind of like what I like to talk about, where it's like we did have a lot of these great like especially in the United States, great American catch wrestlers, and who, if they had some other type of business to fall back on, like some other type of source of income, then they quit because they didn't want to do the predetermined matches, right?
So,
Well, no, go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
how do you go about doing that? Like creating an alliance, like, yeah, that's what you want to do. But for example, judo, they're trying to get more kids involved and spread it that way. Some of them are trying to get it inside schools. IBJJF is trying to turn BJJ into Olympics, like an Olympic sport. So what is your approach with creating this organization?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tougher with catch wrestling because doing catch wrestling for kids is pretty dangerous. You'd have to maybe focus on or do a modified version of folk style, where you'd still like you don't want to have kids neck cranking each other.
Yeah, yeah. The kid pops his head off. Oh no.
Yeah, so that's kind of what was a lot of times considered. Where it's like, so folk style would be considered like what was safer for children to be doing, and then later, and then just like any other sport, where you have like the amateur version, and then you have like the professional version. That's the way it used to be considered, where it's like the pros did all the submission holds and stuff like that. So we could try to, and I've talked about it, and like if we can have some sort of modified folk style where it's more free, like less rules of modern folk style. So that's one way to do it, but also even if we can continue like showing like the real thing, because like a lot of our matches that we have are actually pretty good. Like we have a lot of high level guys competing who have a pretty solid wrestling background. So I think also having continued or like regular events, like hopefully COVID can like with COVID we can maybe have smaller event, or not sorry smaller, but we can have single match events like how other organizations are doing with like say like jiu-jitsu, where they'll have like a few like really controlled environments and stuff like that, but at least they're having some matches going on, so hopefully we can continue stuff like that. But the thing is, I think catch wrestling in particular, I think we probably have a little bit of a harder road because it's there's like the whole aggression aspect, and it's I think also because of the pin, right? Because a lot of people, so there's a lot of tough guys in jiu-jitsu that claim to be able to beat any catch wrestler or whatever, but if they rarely come to compete. So that's one of the reasons why we had like our big gotch events in Iowa, and so like, but a lot of people who were like writing, making comments and stuff on social media didn't show up, right? So that's the thing. So catch wrestling is still foreign enough with the pin, where it's like even some jiu-jitsu practitioners don't want to compete in it because they don't want to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
I think raising awareness is probably the main thing that we got to keep doing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we have the same thing like in judo, where we'll have high-level jiu-jitsu guys, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Gracie jiu-jitsu, whatever child Brazilian jiu-jitsu that they train. Then look on the judo, and they don't like being thrown. They're like, oh, well, let's just do groundwork. It's like that's only half our stuff. Or they don't want to follow. I hate always saying this because but it happens. They want to come do judo, but they don't want to do judo rules. They want to do judo with jiu-jitsu rules, with BJJ rules. And same thing I catch, like when I'll go to catch with you, sometimes we'll get some of the guys from the jiu-jitsu class come, and they'll be like, and they don't want to stand up. They'll be like, oh, I don't want to stand with Juan. Juan's a judo guy and a wrestler and a catch guy. He's going to throw me. I was like, well, that's what you're here for. You know, if I'm at a BJJ school, I'm going to follow your rules. You come to catch, you got to follow our rules.
It's funny that you say that, because during judo class, I don't know if Juan tells you, but he does all these catch stuff to me. That's totally not legal.
What are you talking about? I never do catch stuff to you. I have no idea.
He'll bicep slice me, calf slicer me, like neck crank me. He'll do all of this stuff.
Okay, I will do calf slicers to you. I've never neck cranked you. I do that to Juan instead.
You neck crank me definitely in a half Nelson. So what the reason I'm saying that is, I'm a recreational guy, right? I'm interested in trying out different stuff, and I'm really interested in catch. But if some people out there look at the videos of some of the stuff, or has someone like Juan in their dojo doing that kind of crap to them, what kind of path is there for someone who's like wants to take catch wrestling recreationally and is worried about that, like you said, the aggression, the injury, and all that kind of stuff?
The main thing is like finding like good practitioners who, a lot of times even like the higher level people, they can be more controlled, right? So that's kind of the thing where it's like, I'm sure you can probably find that even in judo, where it's like you'll know who to roll with and who not to roll with and stuff. But I think it's still good to roll with someone who's still going to probably give you some neck cranks, but I mean, they don't have to like do it real hard or whatever. So I think maybe trying to find good.
Juan.
I don't do it. I go very softly. I get the position and then I just ease into it. And you can tap anytime you want. I just ease into it.
Okay.
So you're talking about like how to promote catch wrestling more. And I know like every style does it now, you know, even where, okay. So every style nowadays has like the belt system, you know, everyone followed karate and judo and using belt system. Brazilian jiu-jitsu does belt system, taekwondo. Even I even have people somehow come to me saying like, oh, I'm a black belt in kickboxing now, or I'm a what's that
Muay
wrist?
Thai.
What?
The Muay Thai wristband on their arm.
Yeah, I'm a black belt in that now, or even my friend's girlfriend. Yeah.
The USA Sambo is talking about adding belt system.
Yeah, even my friend's girlfriend, who's a capoeira girl, like she says, "Oh, well, I have an orange. I have not an orange. I have like a gold cord or a green cord or something." I'm just like, "What is this new promotion system things?" Now, catch is like how wrestling and boxing and how kickboxing should be, where there's no promotion system. Would there be a way, or would there be something they do to make a promotion system? Like, say you're, I don't know, like how would you promote? Because like even was it SAW, the Japanese style, they have the belt system. They adapted the judo karate belt system with their colors. Now, would you think that would help promote catch more? People can be like, oh, well, I'm a local player, or I'm a this player.
I do believe so. Like, but kind of like the way I was thinking about it, where it's like, yeah, we might have like beginners curriculum, like maybe beginner, intermediate, advanced. That's kind of what I use. I don't so I'll just plug my stuff right now.
Go ahead.
Like an online version, because like I get emailed all the time from people around the world who have like absolutely like no access to a legit coach. So that's kind of how I've structured it, where it's like I did make like 4 levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and pro, because there's some techniques that you definitely have to know as like a beginner. So I think structuring it with like levels, I think that makes it easy to understand for people. I don't know about going as far as like making belts, because that's just like.
No, I'm just saying, like I see all these systems now bringing in belt systems or like whatever they have. Like next time I hear them say kickboxing, we'd be like, yeah, I'm a black shorts in kickboxing. Black shorts, interesting.
Yeah. I think that's a kind of weird ticket. Like I rolled a lot at 10th Planet before the quarantine, and then but yeah, it's all no-gi, but then sometimes like whoever gets like the next belt, like then the coach would just hand them a belt, and it's like, and then they take it home, and then no one ever sees it again.
Never wear it.
Yeah, never wear it.
They've got rash guards. They have colored rash guards, I think.
Oh, but it's in a way it's kind of meaningless if you go, because they have like rainbow colored rash guards a lot of the time. Like you never know who's who. When I was at a Cobreña gym, they're much more strict. So like brown belts had to wear brown, and you know that so forth. But in 10th Planet, you get people wearing like like Dragon Ball rash guards, or
I'm a Vegeta level, okay?
Yeah,
He's a Goku level.
yeah, I'm Super Saiyan God or whatever. You know?
Super Saiyan God level. Yeah, he just started. He's a Nappa level.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think at least to help people to understand, like, but the thing is like I do believe that there's like, I think that has like the whole belt system has really kind of like become part of the consciousness of people who want to do martial arts. So I think we can't just like throw it away or whatever, but we still have to be strict about like promoting people to, you know, or calling them at different levels, because then there's even people selling their DVDs, and if you buy all of them, you're automatically like
well, we talked about that. There's an organization online. I'm not going to talk. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but there's an organization online that if you want to be a catch wrestler, all you have to do is go there and tell them like what you're like. If I have a black belt in judo or black belt in BJJ, or if I'm an NCAA wrestler or whatever done, and then you submit that to them, and then they send you a certification of what level catch wrestler you are. But you don't have to submit them any catch wrestling stuff, just what your grappling ability is, and then from there they'll be like, oh, well, you're a master, you're a beginner, you're a novice, whatever they call it.
And I think you can talk about this one too, where it's like, so you're a black belt in judo, right? And then you've taken my class, and then I think you can see where it's like these two arts are different. It's almost like different languages, right? And you might know some words from another language, but you're not like a fluent speaker, right? So yeah, I think that's why you can say, or that there's some validity to a belt system where it's like, I can't just go in and like be a black belt, even in 10th planet jiu-jitsu, even though it's like we both basically do kind of no-gi. And so I would be okay not just walking in and being a black belt, because they do a lot of stuff off their back that I don't do. And I can pick up quickly, but you can't, I like, you kind of understand where it's like there's still two different things. And then to just say like, oh, you did freestyle for so many years, then you're already a higher level catch wrestler, when they have such a different version of wrestling, where it's like they have like these 2-minute periods, or no submissions. When they get thrown onto their back or belly, they try to stay on their belly and pancake out and not try to counter. They try to wait for the ref so they can be stood up again. And like that's so different from catch wrestling. That even a freestyle person, as good as they might be, I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, you're a level 3 or like a higher level catch wrestler. You're just not. It's so different.
Well, you have that in all things, like how in judo, like I'm a black belt in judo, but if I go to BJJ school, I always wear a white belt when I go to BJJ schools, even though I have a blue belt and stuff, I don't wear it. But it's like the what is it, 10th plan? I got it at home. I don't wear it at all. But it's like in judo, I'm a black belt. If I go to a BJJ school, they're not gonna be like, oh, you're a brown belt or you're a purple belt, whatever. They're usually gonna be, oh, you're a white belt. It's like the thing with Khabib, we always said, Khabib's international champion of Sambo, international champion of judo, but there's videos of him doing BJJ and he's wearing a white belt. So it's just weird things where people that come for a BJJ background come to catch sometimes, and they just don't know what's been being done to them. They'll try to pull guard, they'll go into their back. And the worst thing, I did it one time to a guy, is that he tried pulling guard from me and I slammed him down. He was like, what was that? Why did you do that? That's not cool, bro. And I was like, catch as catch can. Yeah, but it's tough when you get stuff like that. It's just, it's fun to be well-rounded. And that's why I joined Catch. I joined Catch because I wanted to just do some different things. I love judo. Judo is my main grappling style now, but I just wanted to change it up a little bit. And I didn't want to go do BJJ because it's too, in my opinion, it's very similar to judo. I know a lot of that Newaza stuff. There are like some interesting things.
You're gonna get us hate mail again.
All right, they can come to the dojo anytime they want. It's very similar. Like, do you have different things? Like we one time talked about. Someone asked you about Berimbolo grip during doing catch, and you and me both were like, "Yeah, just step away, just step out." And the guy was like, "What? What do you mean just step out?" It's like, go ahead, put it on me. I think he did it to you, and you're just like, no. You just stepped out of it, and he was like, what do you mean it doesn't work? I think that was one of his main BJJ things he did. And he tried bringing the catch, and I was like, sorry, it doesn't work here. We don't have gi pants on.
I think even within BJJ, Berimbolo is like very low percentage. That's why it became like a meme status.
So you were talking about earlier about how you train with John Strickland, and I know his style is Carney catch wrestling. Is that what he calls it still, or did he change the name again?
No, he just calls it American Hook Wrestling, but I think they sometimes call it Carney style.
Okay. So how did you two get together, start training together?
Because of the whole idea where it's like the legit schools knew of each other, and so then I was trying to help them along to be better connected. And so even like at my first event, it was held here in Los Angeles at UCLA. And so we had Roy Wood from Wigan come, and then also John Strickland came. John had a match as well. He competed in a match. Unfortunately, Billy Robinson had already passed away at that time. But I probably would have been I definitely would have wanted him there, but it might have been a little bit more of an ordeal with his management, right?
Oh, okay.
But he actually, Billy Robinson, chatted with me a lot when we were in Arkansas together about what he would like to see in catch wrestling, or what he would like to see remain in catch wrestling, like stuff like the ban on like the stranglehold. And that's the other main difference, right? So there's basically like 3 things that we don't allow, or that weren't allowed for over 100, probably I think it was banned around like the 1840s, like the chokes. So there was an attempt in England to kind of like standardize the sport a little bit, because it was considered like this crazy stuff that the Northerners did. Right?
2 ruffians.
Yeah, because a lot of times it wasn't like on a mat or he's outside and you try to really slam someone as hard as you can to hurt them or whatever. So, or sometimes they would even kind of, there's never any punches, but sometimes they would like really try to do it. Like sometimes they would try to hurt each other pretty bad.
Get a nice good crossface on the guy, like just try to get a nice tight crossface on him.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the attempts to standardize it was the banning of the chokehold. So, but basically, what all that means is you can't do rear naked choke, you can't do guillotine, and like what's popular now, which also kind of came from catch wrestling, was that bulldog choke.
Wow.
So those 3 things are just what you can't do in competition. And so even in that remained even in professional competition in the United States as well.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that like basically every old timer that I know of abides by, and they prefer to see that remain as like something that remains barred.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so we're talking about with some of the people that are more famous with catch wrestling, you talk about catch, so a lot of people think of Kazushi Sakuraba, but Sakuraba came from a pro wrestling background. He was a Japanese pro wrestler, but also a Japanese freestyle wrestler. And he wanted to show that Japanese pro wrestling, Japanese catch can be a real legitimate sport. What do you think of people like Sakuraba, like what he came up with, what he did, what he fought against, going against all the Gracies, becoming the Gracie hunter, just using, in some people's opinion, just pro wrestling?
Yeah, I would say he didn't exactly use pro wrestling.
No, but I'm saying people are going to see, they're like, oh, the guy from New Japan? Oh, that guy's doing great. Yeah. He's doing lariats. He jumped on the top rope and stuff, doing a Hurricane Rana.
Yeah, and then that's where like this whole lines get blurred, unfortunately. And that was the thing too. Like both Billy Robinson and Roy Wood. So basically, there were 3. So when Japan wanted pro wrestling to be developed in their country, they went to Wigan and asked like, "Oh, who's your best guy? Can you come, teach us here?" And actually, their best guy that they wanted was a man named Billy Joyce. Right? He's the consensus best wrestler of that whole gym. And so even though nowadays, like people would mention Carl Gotch and Billy Robinson, and especially Carl Gotch in Japan, he's like the god of wrestling.
Yeah, Gotch is huge.
Yeah. So first of all, his name isn't Gotch. He took that name later. His name's Carl Istas, and Carl and Billy would get destroyed by this man named Billy Joyce, right? And so, but Billy was a family man, and so he did not want to leave England to live in Japan for an extended period of time. So he refused, and Carl went, and then Billy went, and then later on Roy Wood went. And so since I never had a chance to meet Carl since he passed away, I spoke with both Billy Robinson and Roy Wood, and they said that they basically intended, or they thought they were going to teach catch wrestling, but ultimately the Japanese wanted pro wrestling. So they were trying to show some catch stuff, and then on the weekends and the events, it was all pro. So that was kind of surprising to them. But I guess then they kind of shifted gears to teach a little bit more pro. But ultimately, I think it was Sakuraba's like freestyle, and like some they would still of course show like some of the legit holds and stuff, like the double wrist lock and stuff like that. So it was that combo that made Sakuraba much as successful as he was, really.
Another person they're talking about Gotch is that there's old stories, and it's got my pro wrestling fandom's gonna come out again, is like Minoru Suzuki. The story is that he came to America to train with Mr. Gotch, And then when he trained with him, learned for a few years and went back to Japan and was so enthralled with doing catch wrestling and real fighting. That's why he went to pancration. Do you have any opinion about him at all?
Not so much. I just don't really follow a lot of the Japanese besides Sakuraba, because I feel like a lot of it is definitely kind of shifting a little bit more towards some of the show stuff. Because I feel like even though we have strangleholds barred and stuff like that, we still have good defense to not get choked out. Right. So some of the people who were trained at that, or some of the Japanese people who were trained at that time, ended up getting choked out and stuff like that. so I ultimately feel like it's not necessarily like the complete version and stuff like that. So even Billy told me some famous, I don't want to name any names, but some famous people who claimed to be coached by him really didn't train that much with him, maybe a few days before a match or something like that. So
that's the whole thing. Hey, I took the seminar. Okay. I took the seminar. Technically I trained by him. All right. Yeah.
So since I wasn't there, I can't really verify. I can neither confirm nor deny a lot of this stuff.
Right? All right. What was the other question I wanted to ask you about? So now that you train with me, like I'm a judo black belt judo guy, you train with Emmanuel. He's one of your other guys that trains with you. He's in the judo black belt. What do you get from like the differences and similarities between judo and catch wrestling?
Do you have any way in particular?
No. Hey, as long as you don't make me look bad, okay?
No. I think there's definitely a lot of great stuff about it, and I think that's the thing where it's like the stance is different, right? So it's like in wrestling, it would be similar to like any kind of like freestyle or whatever stance where you'd be a little bit lower. So in judo, if you can get the person if you can pull them more upright, then you can totally control the takedown, and you can then start dictating what happens in the match. So that's kind of like one of the big differences. And I think it's also definitely one of the strengths in judo, because like if the catch wrestler can't counter or can't just like go in for like, we call like even a leg dive, where it's like, you just dive in and see if you can't hang on to something and pull the person down, then the judo person can have an advantage.
Interesting.
Anthony, do you have any more questions?
I'd like to get your opinion on quintet, since we were talking about Sakuraba. What do you think about the rule sets, and whether catch, you would consider like catch rule set or not, or how would you compare the two?
I would consider it really like a jiu-jitsu tournament, because there's no pins, and so but ultimately, I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, I watched a few of their events, and I think that format adds to the drama of it, right? And what's cool about it too is that like, and this is one of the things that was like a principle in Wigan, where it's like, so that Billy Riley would always say is like, he would want someone, especially if they're becoming more famous, he would want them to roll with someone, like he don't want them to just keep rolling the whole night until they finally got beat, right? And so
okay,
so just kind of try to keep them humble a little bit, even if it took a while to beat them. So I think quintet kind of has that idea where it's like, you might be the starter, and even though you might beat a few people, you're gonna fatigue and maybe get beat somehow, or eliminate yourself when there's a draw. So I think it still kind of has that principle where it might help people stay humble. That's kind of, and then I think so for as a spectator, that kind of helps bring up the drama a little bit too, where it's like, it might, there's a high chance where it's like the person who starts isn't going to be the person who wins it. Right?
I think a more than likely chance.
Yeah.
So since you said all these people went to Japan to spread catch, in a sense, even though they were doing pro wrestling, is there a big catch community in Japan? Like, if I were to move to Japan, would I be able to find a legit catch wrestling school and learn something good out of it?
I think the person who's probably the absolute most legit would be my good friend Osamu Matsunami. He's in Kyoto, and his gym, which is called Riley's Gym Kyoto, because so like what they call the Snake Pit in Wigan was originally Billy Riley's gym, and so that was just called Riley's Gym in Wigan. So Osamu, he trained with Billy Robinson, and he was basically like his right hand man, like helping him with a lot of personal stuff in Japan. But then he also trained in Wigan as well, so with Roy Wood, and he met like these older catch wrestlers like Billy Joyce, the one who I mentioned before Billy passed away, and so he has a really interesting story, Osamu, because he didn't speak English, and he learned English by traveling to northern England. He has a lot of funny stories about that. Basically he learned a lot of the bad words real quick.
Of course. First thing you learn.
Yeah. But now he has like an English like teaching or tutoring company in Kyoto. And so, but because he was like, he really immersed himself so much, spending time both in England and with Billy in Japan, I think both Billy and Roy kind of told him when he opened up his gym that like they allowed him to have it be called Riley's Gym. So it's Riley's Gym Kyoto, and it was just designated as a like historical landmark by his city, I believe.
Are there any other places you'd recommend in Tokyo, since that's where I usually travel to the most?
You might want to try then we call Snake Pit Japan.
Okay.
That's where Billy Robinson used to teach. And so then, go check that out. I did have a student who went to check it out, said it was all right. So definitely, Osamu definitely has a very, very thorough like background.
So you teach out of LA. Are there any other places you'd recommend for people around the US? Like that, if they like in judo, for example, the hot spots are California, Florida, Boston. Like those are the big judo spots with a lot of practitioners. So what would be the equivalent for catch wrestling if they don't happen to live in LA?
Okay, then my friend John Strickland on the East Coast, he's in South Carolina, so it might be a reason to visit the South. But yeah, he's in a small town there. Those would be the two main people, and then I guess we have to check on like who else might be like some of our students that we can recommend. I know that there's like also Anthony Pachek in Iowa. So he's one of John Strickland's like better students who I believe he also teaches. So because right now I think a lot of people are still kind of in that student phase and they're not really instructors. So but I believe Anthony Pachek in Iowa, he's in Cedar Rapids, and I believe he teaches at a gym called like Hard Drive. So he just did a no-gi tournament this past weekend. He was able to like beat like 3 guys, and he lost in the final, so he got a silver medal, but it's still pretty good. He submitted everybody until the last guy.
Awesome.
That was fun. Well, I can't wait to do catch again. As soon as we got this vaccine, I'll take that and I'll be back at catch. And I can't wait to maybe one day do a catch wrestling tournament with you. I know we talked about that, doing one here in LA. So
yeah, I'd love to take part or come train for a bit. So
Okay.
yes, Anthony, I'd love for you to come train for a little bit.
Just don't pair me up with Juan. I don't trust him, So
Hey, you gotta go with everybody, bro. You gotta go with everyone, all right?
Actually, even Emmanuel, he's getting pretty good at it. So
I know Emmanuel's talking so much shit right now. The other day he was calling me up, be like, "Hey, Juan, we need to come back, man. I know how to wrestle now. I'm gonna take you down."
Yeah, actually, he's pretty different. I think you'll see he's a lot different than he used to be.
Pretty different. Was he grow a foot? What?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, Raul, is there anything that you like to just put out there, plug your own stuff, talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, we have our online academy, so CWA Academy, but all that stuff you can find on our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. And also check out our YouTube channel as well. If you guys have any questions about like some techniques or stuff, we can probably even do a video for you. So yeah, check it out.
All right.
I'll put it in the description. So
yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So thank you for all getting on the show, talk about catch,
Thank
talk
you.
about different grappling styles. If If anybody has any questions, you can send it to us. You can send it to Raul. Check out his YouTube channel. Check out our YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe like always. You can follow me on Instagram at @the_Juan. You can follow Anthony on Anthony Throws. Raul, you can follow him at Catch Wrestling Alliance. And that's it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.